We have some bad news for custom ROMs this week. Nothing life-ending, but definitely stuff to cover. A spicy data breach, companies continuing to comply with age verification laws, and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 235, where we're dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news in the past week. Thank you all for being here. I am Henry from Techlore.
I'm Nathan from The New Oil.
Before we get into the highlights story, just a quick little mention for our sponsor, which is EasyOptOuts. So there's lots of these data broker industries out there, and they sell your information to people searching websites. So if you ever tried to look up a friend or yourself online, you might find yourself out there. And it's thanks to this invasive industry. There's lots of services that exist out there that many of you have probably heard of, that a lot of YouTubers get sponsored by, but a lot of these are A, very expensive, and B, they're not actually evidence-based. Consumer Reports, Privacy Guides, and the New York Times Wirecutter actually did proper research and found that a lot of these services aren't as effective as they claim to be. And the two that performed the best were EasyOptOuts and Optory. Now, the cool thing about EasyOptOuts is it's only $20 a year. And they ask for minimal information. You can give them anything you want, essentially. There's only 2 employees. They're not owned by people who also run the data broker industry, which we have seen in the past as well. And they don't just mass spray your information and demand people take it down. They actually see if you're on websites first, and then they submit your information to get it taken down. My favorite thing about EasyOptOuts is it's $20 a year, which makes it by far the most affordable option of any of these services out there. And it's what I've myself moved over to, and I have no other better recommendation to give my friends and family at the moment. So if you want to make sure that your information stays off the web, check out EasyOptOuts down in the description. And we want to thank them for supporting our podcast. And now we're going to get into the highlight story. So we actually grouped a couple stories up here. The first one comes from Samsung. Well, not directly from Samsung, but the headline is "Say Goodbye to Your Custom ROMs as One UI 8 Kills Bootloader Unlock." So here is a quote from the story. "While the vast majority of Samsung Galaxy device owners don't tinker with the software on their phones, there is a community of Android enthusiasts that love rooting devices, unlocking the bootloader to run custom ROMs and kernels." Those are two different things. So a lot of people in our community probably care more about the bootloader thing, but a lot of people who root also like to pursue that. That has so far been possible on Samsung devices outside the US. However, new evidence has surfaced that reveals One UI 8 has taken away the ability to unlock the bootloader on Samsung devices. And quote here, "This won't make much difference to users in the US." And many of Americans already know this because it's pretty widely known that Samsung devices are terrible for unlocking and doing anything custom whatsoever on them. But I actually didn't know this myself. It was kept open for users in other parts of the world. And so this is the big update, is if that you're outside of the US and you typically rely on unlocking Samsung devices, One UI 8 could tear that apart for you. This is because if you go, I assume they don't specify this, but in the developer options in Android, if you mass tap the build number or whatever, and you go into the developer settings, there is a section that you can toggle on and off to allow bootloader unlocking. To my understanding, they have noticed that that option was missing in the beta builds. And they also saw a similar change on the Galaxy Z Fold 7 and the Z Flip 7, which are running stable versions of One UI 8. And a deep dive into the stable versions code also confirmed that this is the case regardless of the region, so it's not even locked to a certain place. So that's the story. Pretty bad news, mainly because I know Samsung is really popular internationally, and it's a common device that people get their hands on, and this could have been a way for people to de-Google their devices, have more control over their devices, really just or ignore it if they want to. It didn't really change people's lives if they didn't want to pursue this. And so I'd be really curious to hear why Samsung is doing this, because from what I can tell, there's been no PSA from Samsung about this whatsoever. It's just something that the community has discovered, and now we have to deal with it. Now, on this note, there is a letter that came out this morning to the Calyx OS community that the president and founder, Nicholas Merrill, has left the organization to pursue other projects. He has a really cool history. I actually interviewed Nick on Techlore TLDR. He actually sued the government over the backdoor requests that were done after 9/11.
And pretty much won.
Yeah, he won. He was released by his gag order so that he could actually talk about the case publicly from there on out. Now, he didn't get them to repeal the Patriot Act, which I believe was part of the goal as well. And actually, it was part of the court case. But yeah, he has a really cool history, really cool dude. And then also, I feel really embarrassed, but Desai, I believe is how you say it, has also been the Calyx OS tech lead. And he also will be departing from the Calyx Institute. Now, they have said that following their departure, this is from the article, there will be a period of transition as we move forward. During that time, their new executive director, Ellen McDermott, We'll continue to lead the organization's important work, and we'll try to pretty much keep things running smoothly. And then they also want to ensure operational consistency during the transition and adhere to security best practices. I will say best practices for the situation they're in, because it's not a great situation right now if you're running Calyx, unfortunately. So pretty much what this is going to include is they're going to be upgrading the tech infrastructure to support Calyx development. They're going to be stabilizing update release cycles for their 25 plus devices, which is crazy. I remember when I first started using Calyx, they had, I think it was just a pixel lineup, and now they have 25, which is crazy. Revising and updating their usage and development documentation, wiki, and user guides. And then they will be switching to new signing keys, along with the overhaul of the signing and verification process. And as a result of all these transitions, Calyx users will not be able to receive further security software updates until the process is in place. They reiterate that updates are paused for the time being and say they understand if you want to migrate in the meantime. We are committed to supporting you through this process. To assist any migration, we will publish by August 6th instructions to back up and restore your phone to a stock or custom Android distribution with Seed Vault. So yeah, short term, I think this is going to be a pretty painful transition if you're on Calyx, and it's a really, I guess, bittersweet situation. I didn't actually find out about this until I was live streaming and people mentioned it in the live stream just a few hours ago. And it's kind of surprising. Like, these are some pretty big dogs in the space and they've been doing good work for a long time. So it's a bit sad to see this, but I'd love to see what they're going to work on next. And maybe what they work on next will be more exciting. I don't have any insight and they don't share anything more publicly. So I guess we'll follow along and see what happens there. But if you are a Calyx user, this does put you in a tough spot. If I was daily driving Calyx, and maybe Nate will speak to what maybe he plans to do, because I think you're running a Calyx phone right now, if I'm not mistaken. If it were me, I would weigh the pros and cons right now. I don't think I would migrate to a whole different ROM. I might set a deadline though. Lack of security updates for 6 months is a tough thing to get behind. So I also don't know if I'd want to go through the transition, but I also don't know if I'd want to wait and take the risk. So I actually feel pretty mixed on this myself, to be honest. And I'm really curious to hear what you're going to do, actually. So maybe I'll just throw it into your court.
Man, where to begin? Okay, I guess in answer to your question, I just found out about this like an hour ago, and I was like trying to rush and eat and get in the shower and stuff and get ready for the podcast. So I haven't put too much thought into it. I'm probably going to stay where I am for now, because Calyx already said that updates were paused while they reverse engineer Android 16. In the past, Calyx has gotten a lot of flack for being slow to update, but so there's usually, with any device, there's like an alpha release channel sometimes there's not. There's a beta release channel, and then there's the stable channel. A few years ago, Calyx rolled out a third option called Security Express, which is basically the security updates only and not the feature updates. And I think it was technically a beta. You should treat it as a beta, but I never had any issues with it. I opted into Security Express. I always got the updates within a week of the public release. So to me, that felt like a really good compromise that really reduced a lot of those concerns. But yeah, this whole pause on long-term, like just no updates at all until they reverse engineer, I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm happy to see them not downplaying that this time, because last time they just kind of like, they mentioned it, but they didn't really make a big deal out of it, which I understand. It's also interesting that they're kind of reframing it. Like originally it was, oh, we're pausing because Android 16, but now they're like, oh, we're pausing because we're restructuring.
It could be two different things too. Like this could have not been that premeditated. It's hard to know. But yeah, I agree.
No, for sure. It's just, I just don't like it feels very much like a bait and switch, even though I know that's not what it is. It's just, that's how it feels when they don't mention, like, we have mentioned previously that updates were paused. They're just, because of this, updates are paused. And it's like, well, updates were paused to begin with. But I think that's probably a good idea to put a time limit on it, although I'm not sure what would be appropriate from Calyx.
Yeah, because they don't say, I was just reading through this, they don't say like, oh, we expect to get through these changes within the next few months or the next
Which is
few
what
weeks.
they said with the Android 16 thing originally, is they said, we hope to have this done by the first public release, or not public release, what is it, QR1, like the first quarterly release or whatever. So basically like the next major release to Android 16. We expect to have it out by then. I think this could potentially be a good thing, because they do mention upgrading the infrastructure, stabilizing release cycles, updating the wiki and the user guides. Like, they're relatively current, but they're definitely out of date. Right now, everything we're kind of saying is up in the air. We don't really know for sure what's going to happen. It's good to see that Calyx is not throwing in the towel, because I personally do really like it. I think it's really cool that they're mentioning, we'll help you migrate if you want. I think the only thing that sucks is they do point out, like, you can't go back to Calyx if you migrate right now. So if you do temporarily go to another OS, you're stuck there. And I think that's one of the things that's keeping me from migrating is because I could check out another OS and there's a way I want to do it. I've thought about this before in the past, actually, but I don't know if I want to commit to that because I don't know if it'll work for me in my current workflow.
Yeah, thanks for finishing my thought, because I said short term, this is going to be some pain. But yes, I was thinking also the same, like long term, who knows? This could be good for things. It's hard to know.
Yeah, it may streamline things and maybe then they can focus on, actually hardening Calyx, because I will acknowledge that. I think there's a lot of misinformation going around about Calyx, about how they arguably weaken the Android security model and this, that, and the other. I don't believe in that, but they definitely don't do anything to dramatically harden it the way the graphene does.
And I don't think they try to. They're pretty transparent about that.
Yeah, they're very open about it. They're actually very open about a lot of things. And if you read their documentation, a lot of the decisions they made make sense, in my opinion, even if you disagree with them. Like, it's not like they just woke up, sniffed some glue, and went to the office. They put thought into the things they did. But I was going to say, maybe if they go through this, it would be nice to see them put a little bit more emphasis on security and hardening Android a little bit.
I don't know. I just think they're going for something different. Like, if they were trying to harden things, then they would only have pixel device support, which is what graphene's doing. And we don't need another ROM doing that. And I think that what Calyx is doing is pretty needed, which is like adding more devices and maintaining compatibility across those devices. So that's what I would like to see personally.
I'm sure there's room for improvement is my point, and hopefully we'll see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always down for that.
I think the only other thing that I wanted to point out is they mentioned that there will be new signing keys, and that possibly means that you will have to manually update whenever they start pushing out updates again. I'm really taking a leap of faith and trusting Calyx here not to be hiding anything. But from what I understand, this whole switching signing keys thing is really not standard procedure when a CEO leaves. It could be nothing. It could be just like, hey, let's start fresh. Again, they're upgrading infrastructure. They're rethinking their entire workflow. So maybe it's just like, hey, let's start from scratch, from ground zero, because we haven't reset in a while. Maybe that's all that's going on. Maybe there is something deeper going on. I don't know. I don't want to speculate and, put conspiracy theories out there. But I guess the main thing to be aware is that, yeah, signing keys are changing, which means potentially if you're a Calyx user, you may have to upgrade manually whenever that release comes out. Yeah, and then as far as the Samsung story, I don't really have any thoughts on that, to be honest. That sucks, but also Samsung sucks. I think I'm going to stay where I'm at for now. I'll give some thought to how long of a time period I want to put on it before I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I think those are all my thoughts on that one. And with that, we will jump into data breaches. We're going to start off with Allianz Life, who had the social security numbers of nearly all their members stolen. Allianz Life is an insurance company, I'm assuming from the name, their life insurance, and they disclosed the breach on July 16th, confirming to TechCrunch that the unidentified attackers stole the personally identifiable information belonging to the, quote, majority of its 1.4 million customers, as well as financial professionals and some Allianz Life employees. In a new filing with the Texas Attorney General, Allianz Life said the hackers stole names, dates of birth, postal addresses, and social security numbers from its database. A separate filing with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office also confirmed social security numbers were taken. A spokesperson said they are expected to begin notifying individuals by August 1st.
Lovent's sex toy app flaw leaks private user email addresses. So Lovent is an interactive sex toy manufacturer. They've distributed a lot of stuff. The vulnerability actually stems from the interaction between, they have an XMPP chat system used for communication between users and the platform's backend. And it started when someone using the Lovent's app had muted someone. And that's it. They just muted them. But then they saw the API response and they were like, wait, is that an email address? And why is that there? And after digging deeper, they figured out how to turn any username into their email address. So essentially what they could do with this is this can be used to harvest usernames, as many of the CAM models use the same username, making wide-scale email harvesting possible. The researchers also discovered a critical vulnerability that let them completely hijack an account. Using only an email address, an attacker could generate authentication tokens without needing a password, and using those tokens, an attacker could then impersonate a user, including Lovent's Connect, StreamMaster, and Cam 101. On June 4th, the company claimed the flaws were fixed, but the researchers confirmed this was not the case. They ultimately fixed the account hijack flaw in July, but stated that it would take approximately 14 months to resolve the email flaw, as it would break compatibility with older versions of their app. Lovent says they developed a proxy feature on July 3rd that was suggested by the researchers to mitigate the attack, but even after doing a forced update of the app, the flaw was not fixed, so it's unclear what was changed. The article does note that just discovering email addresses could lead to doxing and harassment.
This last one is just a couple of quick updates about the whole T thing. A second T breach reveals users' DMs about abortions and cheating. So a second major security issue with the women's dating safety app T has exposed much more user data than the first breach we first reported last week, with an independent security researcher now finding it was possible for attackers to access messages between users discussing abortions, cheating partners, and phone numbers they sent to one another. Despite T's initial statement that the incident involved a legacy data storage system containing information from over 2 years ago, the second issue impacting a separate database is much more recent, affecting messages up until last week. The researcher said they also found the ability to send a push notification to all of T's users. When signing up, T encourages users to choose an anonymous screen name, but it was trivial for 404 to find the real-world identities of some users given the nature of their messages, which T had led them to believe were private. Users could easily be found via their social media handles, phone numbers, and real names that they shared in these chats. These conversations also frequently make damning accusations against people who are also named in the private messages, and in some cases are easy to identify. Some of the private messages viewed by 404 include: one user tells another they just discovered their husband on the app being discussed. Another shows a woman contacting others about a man she is engaged to. Multiple messages appear to show women discussing their abortions. Chat logs between women discovered they are dating the same men, exchanging information such as what car he drives for verification. This new exposure is due to any T user being able to use their own API key to access a more recent database of user data. The researcher says that the issue existed until late last week, so it has been fixed. Although, last update, I don't know how long T is going to be around because they have since disabled direct messages after this, and a class action lawsuit has since been filed. So we'll see how long they're around for.
All right, we're going to move over to the company section to kind of continue on the path of age verification that we started talking about last week. I'm sure many of you have already heard on the YouTube side of things. There's been some very viral videos going around, but YouTube has started rolling out age estimation technology to identify US teens and apply additional protections. It's weird because we don't actually know how this works. YouTube tries to identify as a user as a teen, and if it does, it pretty much introduces new protections and experiences while including disabling personalized advertising and enabling digital well-being tools such as screen time and bedtime reminders, among others. They're pretty much saying these protections already exist on YouTube, but have only been applied to those who verified themselves as teens, not those who may have withheld their age. If the new system incorrectly identifies as users under 18 when they're not, you do have the option to verify your age with a credit card, government ID, or selfie. The machine learning powered technology will begin to roll out over the next few weeks to a small set of US users, and then will be monitored before rolling out more widely. YouTube isn't sharing specifics about the signals it's using to infer a user's age, but notes that it will look at some data like the YouTube activity and the longevity of a user's account to make a determination if the user is under 18. And we would like to remind you that we upload all these episodes podcast format as well as to PeerTube.
Your public ChatGPT queries are getting indexed by Google and other search engines. It's a strange glimpse into the human mind. If you filter search results on Google, Bing, and other search engines to only include URLs from the domain chatgpt.com/share, you can find strangers' conversations with ChatGPT. Sometimes these shared conversation links are pretty dull. People asking for help renovating their bathroom, understanding astrophysics, or finding recipe ideas. In another case, one user asks ChatGPT to rewrite their resume for a particular job application. Judging by this person's LinkedIn, which was easy to find based on the details in the chat log, they did not get the job. Someone else is asking questions that sound like they came out of an incel forum. Another person asked the snarky hostile AI assistant if they can microwave a metal fork. For the record, no. But they continue to ask the AI increasingly absurd and trollish questions, eventually leading it to create a guide called How to Use a Microwave Without Summoning Satan, a beginner's guide. ChatGPT does not make these conversations public by default. However, a conversation would be appended with a /share URL only if the user deliberately clicks the share button on their own chat and then clicks a second create link button. The service also declares that your name, custom instructions, and any messages you add after sharing stay private. After clicking through to create a link, user can toggle whether or not they want that link to be discoverable. However, many users may not anticipate that other search engines will index their shared links, potentially betraying personal information. And the author says, "My apologies to the person whose LinkedIn I discovered." According to ChatGPT, these chats were indexed as part of an experiment, and the spokesperson said, "ChatGPT chats are not public unless you've chosen to share them. We've been testing ways to make it easier to share helpful conversations while keeping users in control, and we recently ended an experiment to have chats appear in search engine results if you explicitly opted in when sharing," unquote.
And in the last company news of the week, users are left scrambling for a plan B as Dropbox is dropping Dropbox passwords. So this discontinuation of Dropbox password will happen in phases in less than a month on August 28th. So if you are using this will become view only on August 28th in both mobile app and browser extensions, and the autofill functionality will be deactivated. On September 11th, the mobile app will stop working completely, although data will remain accessible through the browser extension. And then finally, on October 28th, Dropbox passwords will be entirely discontinued, and they did recommend formally 1Password as a replacement. While the service is an adequate password manager, it is prone to the occasional glitch. Users will need to pay a subscription once 1Password's free trial ends. As for why Dropbox decided to drop the service, the company said it was part of their efforts to focus on enhancing other features in their core product.
We're going to go into research, and we only had one research story this week. macOS Spotlight flaw leaks Apple Intelligence data. So for the record, this has been fixed, but I know we've been talking about Apple Intelligence a lot, so I thought this was worth mentioning. Apple has fixed the security flaw in patches released in March for macOS Sequoia 15.4 with improved data redaction. While Apple restricts TCC, which is a secure technology and privacy framework that blocks apps from accessing private user data, they restrict TCC access only to apps with full disk access and automatically block unauthorized code execution. Microsoft security researchers found that attackers could use the privileged access of Spotlight plugins to access sensitive files and steal their contents. This includes, but is not limited to, photo and video metadata, precise geolocation data, face and person recognition data, user activity and event context, photo albums and shared libraries, search history and user preferences, as well as deleted photos and videos. And I think the first paragraph said something about passwords in some cases, but I didn't see that anywhere else in the article.
This next one's going to go into the politics section, and it is not a good story. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So this is about Canada's Bill C2, which they say is opening the floodgates to surveillance, and not just any surveillance, US surveillance for Canadians. So this is from the EFF, and if Bill C2 passes, Canadian police and spy agencies will be able to demand information about people's online activities based on the low threshold of reasonable suspicion. Companies holding such information would have only 5 days to challenge an order and blanket immunity from lawsuits if they hand over data. Police and CSIS, which is their intelligence service, will be able to find out whether you have an online account with any organization or service in Canada. They can demand to know how long you've had it, where you've logged in from, and which other services you've interacted with no warrant required. The bill will also allow for the introduction of encryption backdoors, which would force companies to surveil their customers, which would now be allowed under the law, as long as these mandates don't introduce a systemic vulnerability, a term the bill doesn't even bother to define. The information gathered under these new powers is likely to be shared with the United States. Canada and the US are currently negotiating a misguided agreement to share law enforcement information under the US Cloud Act. This was a deal from 2020. It hasn't been good for users. This is according to the EFF. Earlier this year, the UK Home Office ordered Apple to let it spy on users' encrypted accounts. That security risk caused Apple to stop offering UK users certain advanced encryption features, and lawmakers and officials in the US have raised concerns that the UK's demands might have been designed to leverage its expanded Cloud Act powers. If Canada moves forward with Bill C2 and the Cloud Act deal, American law enforcement could demand data from Canadian tech companies in secrecy. No notice to users would be required, and companies could also expect gag orders preventing them from even mentioning they have been forced to share information with US agencies. And this is, again, the EFF. This isn't speculation. Earlier this month, a Canadian government official told Politico that this surveillance regime would give Canadian police the same kind of toolkit that their US counterparts have had under the Patriot Act and FISA. Now, the shitty thing here from the EFF, under US law, non-US persons have little protection from foreign surveillance. If US cops want information on abortion access, gender-affirming care, or political protests happening in Canada, they're going to get it. The data sharing won't necessarily be limited to the US either. There's nothing to stop authoritarian states from demanding the new trove of Canadians' private data that will be secretly doled out by its law enforcement agencies.
Next up, this also comes from the EFF. You went to a drag show. Now the state of Florida wants your name. If you thought going to a pride event or drag show was just another night out, think again. If you were in Florida, it might land your name in a government database. That's what's happening in Vero Beach, Florida, where the Florida Attorney General's office has subpoenaed a local restaurant, the Kilted Mermaid, demanding surveillance video, guest lists, reservation logs, and contracts of performers and other staff, all because the venue hosted an LGBTQ+ pride event. To be clear, no one has been charged with a crime, and the law Florida is likely leaning on here, the so-called Protection of Children Act, which was designed to be a drag show ban, has already been blocked by federal courts as likely unconstitutional. But that didn't stop Attorney General James Althmere from pushing forward anyways. Without naming a specific law that was violated, the AG's press release used pointed and accusatory language, stating that, quote, in Florida, we don't sacrifice the innocence of children for the perversions of some demented adults. His office is now fishing for personal data about everyone who attended or performed at the event. EFF has long warned about this kind of mission creep, where a law or policy supposedly aimed at public safety is turned into a tool for political retaliation or mass surveillance. Going to a drag show should not mean you forfeit your anonymity. It should not open you up to surveillance, and it absolutely should not land your name in a government database. The only commentary I have here is this is a non-political take. And for the record, I want to remind people, or inform people, for those who weren't around, EFF was one of the first organizations to speak up when Donald Trump got banned on Twitter and said, not a cool idea to ban a sitting president. So regardless of your political views, I think EFF really does good work. I might leave this in the public section. I see a lot of people talk trash about EFF. They even defended Cloudflare when people were pressuring them to remove Kiwi farms, stating that that should not be the registrar's job to decide what content they do and don't host.
No, but it's true. Like, I don't know why, but sometimes I'll get comments that are anti-EFF. The EFF has a pretty good history of overall being very bipartisan and just fighting for overall good things that they think should exist, regardless of who's in power. And yet, I don't know, apparently every organization nowadays is like woke or something. I don't know what they did to deserve that title, but I did get some comments when I was like, dude, these governments are literally going after encryption, and the EFF is one of the few people who can actually put up a fight against it. And I'm getting people in the comments going, oh, don't support the EFF, you know, they're woke now. And it's like, okay, so who should we support then, sir? Like, you?
Nobody, because laws don't work, even though laws are now forcing us all to age verify and banning encryption.
Yeah, so I don't mind keeping this in either in the public section, because the EFF is doing great work. And if you guys have a better organization that's actually fighting the legal fight, I'm not talking tech, I'm not talking content, I'm talking like out there in the courts actually fighting this crap, because that is where you're going to see some of the biggest impact. Give me another organization in North America that's doing the kind of work the EFF is doing. And as overall like bipartisan as they've been for the entire history, they've been around for decades, and then we'll start talking and see if that's a better alternative to put our bets on. Because I will die on the hill that the EFF is doing great work, and I have no issue saying that, and I agree with Nate on that.
And actually, real quick on that, the thing I want to end on is, even if you do disagree with the EFF and drag shows and all that, this blows my mind constantly. In 4 years, there's going to be a new president, and it might be a Democrat. So why are we trying to give more power to governments to pick any event and ban it or put people on a list? If it's a Democrat in office next, what happens when they start requesting a list of guests at gun shows? Or people who go to, I don't know, churches, houses of worship, who pays tithes? Like, how long before they start wanting to know that stuff? This is why it matters. Even if you disagree with these things, this is not the solution, quote unquote solution, that you're looking for. Because this can be weaponized against you just as easily. I've seen this phrase a lot lately where it's like, not standing up for other people's rights is exactly how you lose your own. And I'm so pissed watching this happen, where people's rights are being stripped away at an alarming rate. And a lot of people are standing by and letting it happen because they don't like those people, or they agree with the stated agenda of what it's going to produce, without realizing that your rights can be taken away too.
It's really relevant. I mean, normally we leave these rants. Yeah, maybe that's what this is. It's like a sneak preview to maybe some stuff we talk about for the patrons. I don't mind keeping this in for the public because it's a pretty important one. But it's a critical thing to discuss right now, because, and this is part of the reason why we do this podcast, and like, we're talking about things that are universal truths. We think encryption is a universal truth. We think that that enables privacy, and that's a human right, regardless of who you are, regardless of your background. It can be because you want to keep the drag shows that you're attending secret. It could be because you want your place of worship to be private and with you. Like, like I think both of those use cases are equally valid, and you have a right to that layer of privacy. And I continually see, and it makes me sad because I do see some of the, like, a lot of these comments, because these new videos I put out on Techlore have been getting a really great new like community that I'm not used to seeing. They're getting a lot of views, reaching new audiences on YouTube. It's really cool to see. But it is introducing a lot of this like partisan nonsense that is like, oh yeah, well, this is why they're doing it, because they're trying to get rid of these people. And it's like, those people they're trying to get rid of, the powers that you're utilizing to get rid of those people, it was, like Nate said, the same powers they're going to use to get rid of you when the person you don't like is in power. So it is scary how willing people are to give up their own rights as well in order to tear down others. It's sad. And I think this needs to be addressed because encryption is not a partisan issue.
Not to overly politicize it, but it's that whole, if anyone's ever seen that whole, like, it's usually used to make fun of the right, but it's the whole leopards eat my face thing. Apparently it comes from a comic or a joke where it's like, oh, I voted for the leopards eating your face party because I didn't think the leopards would eat my face. Again, I'm not even talking about politics here. I'm not talking about, I mean, we're talking about politics, but like, I'm not trying to take an anti-right stance. We were saying this in Joe Biden's day. If your rights are being stripped away, it can be weaponized against you too. Don't get your face eaten, please. Any of you.
I'll go ahead and just take the next two because they're related to the same country here, which is the UK. So first, Google says UK government has not demanded an encryption backdoor for its users' data. The Washington Post reported that the UK Home Office sought a secret court order in the UK surveillance court demanding that Apple allows UK authorities to access the end-to-end encrypted data. Google has said that they didn't demand it from them, and Meta told Wyden's office, Wyden is a senator in Oregon in the US, even though it's about the UK, on March 17th that the company has not received an order to backdoor their encrypted services, like that reported about Apple. Wyden said, we haven't received a technical capabilities notice referring to any UK surveillance order. This is the next story about the UK. There's a video that's been going around. I actually don't know who the politician is, but there's a UK politician who's just like mansplaining like a child. He's like talking to a child in the video. He's like, don't use a VPN. If you use a VPN, you're harming children, and you don't want to be harming children. You want to be a good citizen. And I swear to God, like if you can find a clip of this, Nate, and include like maybe just an audio clip here, it literally sounds like satire. It sounds like satire. I was like, there's no way this is real. And it was real.
And for everybody who's out there thinking of using VPNs, let me just say to you directly, verifying your age keeps a child safe, keeps children safe in our country. So let's just not try and find a way around. Just prove your age, make the internet safer for children, make it a better experience for everyone. That's surely what we should aspire to in this country.
Anyway, in response to the UK doing age verification and all this crazy stuff that's been going on there that we covered last week, people have been using VPNs to get around it. Now, they're warning that promoting the use of VPNs could attract fines. So platforms which deliberately target UK children and promote VPNs could now face enforcement action, including significant financial penalties. So they're trying to discourage the use of using a VPN. Now, a handful of MPs have previously gone so far to suggest that VPNs should be banned to stop circumvention of the rules, which would be an incredibly dangerous precedent for a democracy to set. And the government has confirmed that they are not currently planning to do this, although plans can and often do change with time. And there's an interesting closing line from the article. Please note that comments on this news article have been closed, as we're currently unsure about the liability if anonymous posters start using it to promote VPNs.
Spotify is forcing users to undergo face scanning to access explicit content. So Spotify is requiring users in the UK to verify that they're over 18 to view certain age-restricted content, and users are reporting seeing a pop-up on Spotify to verify their ages following the enactment of the UK's Online Safety Act last week, which forced platforms to verify the ages of everyone who tries to access certain kinds of content deemed harmful to children. You may be presented with an age check when you try to access certain age-restricted content like music videos tagged 18+, Spotify says on an informational page about the checks. If you fail the checks, or if the age verification system can't accurately determine your age, which involves getting your face scanned through your device's camera to determine your age or uploading your license or passport. If that doesn't work, your Spotify account will be deleted. Spotify is using a third-party system for age verification called Yachty. In 2023, when Utah started requiring age verification to access porn site Xhamster implemented Yachty, which involved a multi-step process including facial analysis or uploading a photo of government-issued ID. After publication of the story on Wednesday morning, a Spotify spokesperson emailed me to claim that the headline is not accurate. Quote, "We are not forcing users to go through our age assurance checks. These are voluntary. There are multiple ways that users can go through our age assurance checks, e.g. ID verification, not just quote-unquote face scanning. These checks are not in order to access explicit content. They're to access music videos that are labeled 18+. The author notes all of this was already in the article as it first appeared when published Wednesday morning, cited directly from Spotify's own site. Quoting the email again, "Will you please update the headline to reflect this? So to actually be accurate, your headline could read, Spotify is offering users age assurance technology to access videos labeled 18+.
So the last political story of the week is Australia widens teen social media ban to YouTube and it scraps exemption. I'm going to keep this really brief. Pretty much Australia already banned access to teens to some social media platforms, but they previously excluded YouTube because YouTube is like educational and it's whatever. They've removed that exemption. So now you might need to age verify And this ban outlines YouTube accounts for those younger than 16, allowing parents and teachers to show videos on it to minors.
We're going to move into free and open source news, and we're going to start with a very short one out of left field, introducing Proton Authenticators, secure two-factor authentication your way. Honestly, that's really all there is to say. It does appear to be fully free. There is no like premium version or whatever, as far as I can tell. If I'm wrong, definitely please shoot us an email and let us know, because I didn't find one. It's what you would expect. Since it's linked to your Proton account, it can sync across multiple devices. Interestingly, they do have apps for every OS, so iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, and Linux, Debian, and Fedora, and comes with all of the standard stuff that you would expect. You know, it's encrypted, it's zero knowledge, they can't see your 2FA seeds. You can lock the app with like a pin or a fingerprint on mobile. You can import and export. I mean, it's pretty standard stuff.
Linux 6.16 brings faster file systems, improved confidential memory support, and more Rust support. So they do say in the article, this is small, but it includes some significant updates. Linus himself summed up the release as looking fine, small and calm, but really not all that interesting in all the best ways. So again, first, Rust is continuing to become well integrated into the kernel. If you want to see how exactly they're doing that, definitely check out the show notes. It's a lot of more technical stuff. If security is a top priority for you, the kernel now supports Intel Trusted Execution Technology and Intel Trusted Domain Extensions. This, along with Linux's improved support for AMD Secure Encrypted Virtualization and Secure Memory Encryption, enables you to encrypt your software's memory in what's known as confidential computing. This feature improves cloud security by encrypting a user's virtual machine memory, meaning someone who cracks a cloud can't access your data. And chances are that average users will see the benefits if they use OpenVPN. OpenVPN's native networking protocol still won't run as fast as WireGuard, but it will at least give it more of a race. So
that'll take us into the Misfits, where we just have one quick story this week that I thought was interesting. So I thought it would be fun to share with you guys. It says, man awarded $12,500 after Google Street View camera captured him naked in his yard in Argentina. I guess this guy was actually a cop. Not that that should have anything to do with anything, but just the article says the policeman. So the policeman had sought payment from the internet giant for harm to his dignity, arguing the wall was behind a 6.5-foot wall when a Google camera captured him in the buff from behind in a small town, Argentina, in 2017. His house number and street name were also laid bare, broadcast on Argentine TV covering the story, and shared widely on social media. The man claimed the invasion exposed him to ridicule at work and among his neighbors. Another court last year dismissed the man's claim for damages, ruling that he had only himself to blame for, quote, walking around in inappropriate conditions in the garden of his home, unquote. Google, for its part, claimed the perimeter wall was not high enough. Appeals judges, however, concluded the man's dignity had been flagrantly violated and awarded him an amount in Argentinian pesos equivalent to about $12,500 payable by Google. Quote, this involves an image of a person that was not captured in a public space, but within the confines of their home, behind a fence taller than the average sized person. The invasion of privacy is blatant, they wrote. And they found that there was no justification for Google to evade responsibility for the serious error that involved an intrusion into the plaintiff's house within his private domain, undermining his dignity. The judges pointed to Google's policy of blurring faces and license plates of people in vehicles photographed for Street View as evidence it was aware of a duty to avoid harm to third parties. The court absolved co-accused telecoms company Cablevision SA and news site El Censor of liability for the images spreading, saying that their actions had, quote, helped highlight the misstep committed by Google, unquote.
And that's it for the week. Bad news again for custom ROMs, kind of globally as well as for Samsung phones. And then Calyx OS has some updates that hopefully will work out long term. We got some spicy data breaches, which hopefully didn't age verify us on YouTube. Companies continue to comply with age verification laws, like YouTube, and more. And I will let Nate talk about his experience with EasyOptOuts.
Yes, so our sponsor this week is EasyOptOuts, who I am still using and still pretty satisfied with. They're very affordable, only $20 a year. Cancellation is easy. They offer refunds if you're not satisfied. They are very effective per Consumer Reports and Privacy Guide's research, and they are recommended as one of New York Times Wirecutter's top picks for a data removal service. They ask for very minimal information. They're just trying to find your profile, so they just want the publicly available stuff that you would find on any given people search website. There are only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with a lot of third-party contractors or other people. There are no ads or analytics on the platform. They only request data removal if they find your data, so they're not just blasting out emails to everybody and sharing your data with people that might not even have it. They do removals the way a normal person would. They're focused on publicly accessible people search websites, and they are supporting new sites over time as they discover them, and they offer business plans if you are overseeing a large group of people that you would like to give access to the service. Like I said, I've been really happy with them. Yeah, just really, really happy to see that it continues to be effective for me so far. Thank you to EasyOptOuts for supporting us. Definitely check them out if you're in the US and looking for help with removing your data.
Yeah, thank you. And then also want to thank you all for listening to the surveillance report. If you want to get involved, there's a lot of big stuff happening right now, and you guys can all kind of get active. Yes, it helps us as a podcast, but there's not many people talking about this stuff on the internet. And so it can also help spread the message for the things we talk about. So you can do that by sharing this podcast with people you know. Make sure you're subscribed and engaging. Give us a rating if you're listening on a place where that's an option. And we want privacy to reach as many people as possible. And you really can make a big difference in helping us reach others. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next week.